Can the Yankees win their 28th World Championship? Here now with Dom AMORE, Hartford Courant baseball writer, a regular contributor here. Dom, always good to see you.
Always good to be here, Stan.
Yankees back doing what they do, gearing up for a championship, but a little bit older, a little more nicked up. How are they positioned now? Let's start with Mariano Rivera, the ace, Hall of Famer. Not really on his A game right now.
No, you know, it's interesting. It's only been a year, but the core four, so to speak, Rivera and Posada and Jeter and Andy Pettitte, they all look so much older just 1 year later. And that's what happens in baseball, you know, and it's kind of a sign that, you know, for an awful lot of years the Yankees have had unique players, a shortstop with 200 hits, switch-hitting catcher with power, and a closer like no others. And those commodities are going to be hard to replace when they're gone. So this might be kind of a last hurrah for those guys.
Now, having said that, what kind of motivation in that locker room of those guys? They obviously are very well aware that they're getting older. That can help them, or will it not matter at all?
Well, I think it all comes down to whether or not they have that ability to get themselves up and lift their game up to playoff level intensity, you know, for a month. With players of their ability and they have that potential to do that. So it's possible that come Tuesday night or Wednesday night when the lights come on, those guys are going to be much different players than we've seen the last month or 6 weeks. But clearly over the last 6 weeks, you know, it's hard to feel good about what you've seen from the Yankees. They lost 14 of 21 games at one point when they really needed to win. I mean, they weren't 10 games up. I mean, they're really kind of fortunate that the other teams did not win more games and put more pressure on them.
It's an old and tired team, so if you're manager Joe Girardi, how do you manage that?
Well, I think, you know, in the last month has been a rough one for Joe Girardi, and I think he kind of showed that he's got 4 years experience and not 25 or 30 like his predecessor. He got caught in between. I think he tried to rest players, he tried to line things up for the playoffs, which is not a bad idea, but he started a little bit too early, and I think what he ended up doing, Stan, is getting caught in between where he achieved neither goal. He didn't necessarily rest anybody. I mean, mentally they had more stress the last week than they needed, and he might have lost his playoff position.
Interesting. So they kind of shut the motor down a little too early right there, right?
And not in the right way.
Now, a lot of whispers about Girardi. As you mentioned, it's an aging team right here. One last run. Chicago Cubs job is open. Girardi's the Cubs guy. A lot of whispers about Girardi wanting that job. It's his real dream job. If they win, does that Cubs job become more appealing, the Yankees? And if they lose, does that Cubs job become more appealing?
Well, the one thing you always want to remember about the Yankees after their Joe Torre experience, you remember too big to fail? The Yankees never want to have another manager who's too big to fire. So if the Cubs come calling and they offer a lot of money, I wouldn't look for the Yankees to get in any kind of a bidding war to keep Girardi. Because I think they would if nothing, the Yankees hierarchy would love more than to prove that they could bring in anybody and anyone could manage.
How about Joe Torre now? So he's mending fences, came back for the big George Steinbrenner monument. They were hugging and reminiscing. One more time for Joe Torre if Girardi leaves?
No. I never say never, especially with the Yankees, but not this one. You know, it's simple reason Stanley's 70 years old.
Yeah. And,
you know, you're not going to go start up again somewhere new with a one-year contract. It's got to be at least a 3-year deal. And that's why I don't see Joe Torre managing again. You know, it's a possibility that...
The Mets come calling?
I really don't see it. I don't see them calling for the reasons I just mentioned, and I don't see him going for that. You know, one of the things you heard a lot from Joe Torre is managing was fun again in L.A. You know, he didn't miss the 18 Yankee Red Sox games. He didn't miss the Subway Series games. And coming back to New York with the Mets, you know, it's not going to be much. Managing's not going to be much fun with the Mets.
Stuff. Yeah. So quickly, heir apparent. If indeed, we're getting way ahead of ourselves. But if indeed Girardi is out for whatever reason, who are a couple of guys you want to throw out there as heir apparents?
The guy I would throw out there is Trey Hillman.
Okay.
You know, he came up through the
minor league guy, right?
Well, he came up through their system. They love him, and he has some experience managing the Royals and in Japan.
Didn't do too well the Royals, though, right?
He didn't, but it's the Royals, and they may look at that and say, well, you know, he got more out of them than he could have. So,
how about my guy Willie Randolph? Dom, give Willie one more shot on this thing.
You know, I'm a Willie guy, and I would love to see him get another chance to manage, and he would certainly be he would be an interesting choice for the Yankees because of his Yankee pedigree. But I just, knowing the way the Yankee organization operates now, I have a feeling that they would be much more likely to look for a guy like Hellman, who's more of an organizational man. The manager of the Yankees has to work as part of the team, you know, which Girardi does. But and that's part of the problem there too, Stan. I think sometimes he may take the rap for things that the front office wants him to do.
If there's one team out there where teams are still formulating, Cincinnati Reds. Gotta love that team. Dusty Baker comes back, young team, a lot of vim and vigor. Sleeper potential, and all this shakes out. The Reds and their
no one's talked about them at all, but they've got some exciting players. They've got some interesting pitchers. But if you really have to look at it right now, and I don't want to hurt you here, but it'd be awfully tough to overlook the Phillies with what they've done the last 2 weeks.
You have heard me that.
You know, you see teams play lousy going into the playoffs and win it, and you see teams play great and lose, but I still think it's better to go in playing great like the Phillies are doing. It'd be awfully hard to bet against them the way they're playing.
Since you injected the Phillies, only fair to bring in the New York Mets. Let's keep it. Let's go back to local.
Sure.
What happens now to the Mets now? Jerry Manuel, we can assume, is fired, is gone. Carlos Beltran, his future. What are your thoughts? What happens there with that franchise? Omar Minaya, the general manager, being assigned maybe?
Well, I think they need a culture change. And sure, there are a lot of things that happen that may have been beyond this person's control or beyond that person's control, but it's baseball, and they've gone along in this direction for a number of years now, and it hasn't worked out. So they need a culture change.
There's talent there, right?
There's talent there, but what you have to keep in mind with the Mets, when you get to December, and Mets fans start screaming, sign this guy, get this guy, sign that guy. Remember Santana, remember Beltran, remember
Pedro.
Jason Pedro. When you sign free agents, you're paying guys for what they've already done in the past, and it may not work out. And the Yankees made a couple of right decisions, but more often than not, the Yankees have gotten burned too by giving guys 6- and 7-year contracts when they're past their prime. And that's what happens in baseball. The peak earning years come after a guy's best years may be behind them.
Now, 15 seconds. I cannot get out of here. That mentioned the Boston Red Sox. My friends, my Red Sox fans will be upset. The Sox, real quick, how they regroup?
Well, again, I think they have to make good decisions in the offseason. You really have to write off the year for them. They had their 3 best players out all year. No one could possibly plan for that. So I would just write off the year. I think they have the pieces in place. They just need to get healthy and maybe fill in a few spots.
All right, he's Don Maury, our baseball insider. Want to thank all our guests. What camera, Mikey? 2, 1. All our guests: Chris Keating, Christine Stewart, Reese Norris, and Don Maury. You can send your show comments or requests, or even watch us again at ctnow.com and friend us, Dom, on Facebook. Become a fan of the Stan Simpson Show. We're on Twitter too. Look out for the tweets. Lori Perez and The Real Story are next. For the good folks here at Fox, Connecticut, I'm Stan Simpson. We'll see you next week.